And now going back to the book before that book, before Zimzum, what we talk about when you talk about God, I think
Yeah,
such a transformative book for so many
I
people because
like that book.
yeah, I think the biggest concept for me that really messed up my life, thanks a lot, was this idea that God is calling us forward,
Mm.
continually calling us to progress, to evolve, um, which is not a foreign concept to Christianity, but to so many Christians it is a foreign concept. Um, can you unpack a little bit? I mean, you did it in the book, but can you unpack what it looks like that God is calling us forward, and what does that look like for Christians living in America today? How do we respond to God calling us forward?
Well, let's do a drawing, shall we? There's, like, think about it in terms of the universe. Um, can you see what's on that piece of paper?
Yep.
You see the dot and the lines?
Yeah.
Like, think about cosmologists, scientists, etc. basically estimate that the universe is 13.7, 13.8 billion years old. And they talk about the singularity. They talk about a point of infinite density, and then some sort of explosion, some sort of big bang. And out of that comes all of these primordial elements. There's some hydrogen there, some carbon in there, some lithium in there, and it creates it's the birth of the universe. And so you have these physical elements, minerals, gases, etc. And then at some point, the thing kept exploding or banging or whatever the word is, and you end up with like first life forms, single cells, life forms, amoebas. You know what I mean? You have this, but then called the biosphere. And then you have evidence that there are these plants. You have plants and then you have animals. You know what I mean? And then somewhere in there we have evidence of like human beings, like walking around, talking and writing songs and building stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have these human beings writing books and having discussions and thinking. Well, thought, the ability to form a sentence, is a bit more advanced than phytoplankton. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And then you have people talking about experiences of the divine. You have the birth of mysticism. You have religions forming, the idea that there are forces, the idea that you can be lined up with these forces, that you can be righteous. So the very nature of the universe is there is something within it that drives it to move beyond itself. I mean, it self-transcendence is built into the whole thing from the very beginning. Because 13 billion years ago, there weren't book clubs. There weren't Skype and podcasts where we would discuss what's it all mean. Like in the book, I talk about dinosaurs weren't like, I just don't feel fulfilled. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So even this conversation that we are having, and when people say things like, oh, I don't believe in the Bible and all that primitive stuff. Well, where did you get this idea that that's primitive? From what place do you make that judgment? You make it from a less primitive place. You believe that wholesale genocide is wrong. Why? Why do you believe that's wrong unless there is something about your place in this unfolding story that is farther along when it comes to violence against other human beings? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's interesting then, if the very nature of the universe, and so then the universe is literally expanding, but it is expanding, it is adding the idea that we could reflect on ourselves, consciousness, comes relatively late in the game.
Yeah.
So the really interesting thing is when somebody is selfish, when their world is more and more about them. That's actually going the opposite direction than the movement of the entire cosmos, which is to move beyond itself to make more. I love this Hebrew word tov, good.
Yeah.
In the poem that begins the Bible, it's good, it's good. Well, good's not perfect. Perfect is fixed. Perfect is a very Greek category. Everything, it cannot be improved upon. Good is something very different because good is in process. It's becoming. It will not be the same thing tomorrow that it is today.
That's right.
So perhaps when Jesus talks about serving is essentially orienting your life around that which is larger than yourself, namely other people or the earth or what. When he talks about serving, in some ways what he is saying is line yourself up with the fundamental movement of the universe, which is to expand and move beyond itself. How's that work? I've never worked this out, though. I like it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's good.
So the pulling us forward, why do we know that war can't be the answer? Where does this idea come from? Why do we have this sense of ranking that those behaviors, why does Donald Sterling lose his NBA team like that when a generation ago he would have been articulating the views of a lot of people? He may still be, and yet something has risen, something has emerged that says we don't talk about other human beings like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Yeah.
So when people say, atheism, belief, those categories to me are not that compelling or interesting or even that helpful. But I do think all of us, there is this thing that is expanding. And it has built within it self-transcendence to move beyond itself.
Sure.
And that is the great mystery at the heart of everything.
That's good. Wow.
Good times.
Yeah. So out of that came, when I started reading, after hearing your 500 book suggestions in Laguna, I came across this concept of interspiritual age that's coming in this progression and evolution of consciousness. There's this idea that Phyllis Tickle on the Christian side calls it the age of the spirit, but this idea that in the future people of faith and all people are going to unite around this general consciousness where the religious divides that separate us, the racial divides, they fade and we participate in this one singular spirituality, this one singular consciousness. It kind of feels like, I'm going to get the color wrong, but you shared that.
An integral framework. Yeah.
I think is yellow the final?
Yellow, some turquoise, some cobalt. Yeah. At second tier consciousness, you have this.
Yeah. Do you think that we're seeing, is that going to be a reality in the next couple generations? Do you think humanity can actually get to that point?
Yeah, but not without profound disruption and resistance. And the disruption and resistance is actually part of the movement forward.
Totally.
Desjardins talks a lot about this. I mean, like if you go to the Minor Prophets, some of Isaiah's visions, when he talks about Eden being restored, I mean, there's this line about Egypt worshiping together with Israel. Well, wait. At the time, Egypt was sworn enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What's that? I mean, is Egypt, and in that context of that passage in the end of the Hebrew Scriptures, I mean, is that ISIS coming to dinner? I mean, that language is the most. I don't know if that's a fair parallel, but it is the most loaded electric image he could have used for the enemy. Egypt and Israel will worship together. When the Minor Prophets, and some argue it's the first coherent articulation of social justice, when they start talking about a just world where the poor aren't traded for a pair of sandals, one of the things they articulate the most is the sense of a feast, and all these people who wouldn't dine together are dining together. And even when Jesus talks about Abraham's bosom, which is a very first century Jewish way of talking about, where it's all headed,
Sure.
the images are always from the east and west, which was, you can't get a more first century way of saying, dude, it's everybody coming from every direction.
Mm.
And he seems to repeat this again and again. It's the story about a feast in which people who you wouldn't expect are all invited. People who you wouldn't expect show up. People who are breaking all sorts of social customs and mores to be there are there. And if there's anything in the Jesus story, if there's any, one of the themes that comes up again and again and again is God's throwing a party and you aren't going to believe who's there. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It seems like if you're really serious about Jesus, then if you're really serious about his teachings and about following him and being a Christian, however you want to put it, then you would live with this assumption that the last thing I'm going to do is be the person saying, you can't come to the party.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
It just seems like if you're going to be true with what he talks about, again, it's not like one verse where you're like, hey, look, it's theme after theme after theme. It's, you all think the party is for you. Mm. You all think that it's going to be just you around the table. Mm. But man, oh man. You know what I mean? I love the Melchizedek story.
Sure.
Which happens early in the scriptures. Because it's like, if there's anything this story is about, it's we got to explain to you the Abraham thing. We got to explain to you a new tribe. We got to explain to you this new thing that's happening in the world, and that through this tribe, everybody's going to be blessed. Yep. And then right away, what happens? Uncle Melchizedek shows up out of nowhere and is like, Abraham, what's up? And Abraham gives him a tenth, which is like, wait. The whole narrative is, we're here to tell you how the world's going to be saved. Oh, by the way, there's some other people who are in on it way earlier than you.
Oh, goodness.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic? And then when the writer of Hebrews is trying to explain Jesus, is like, oh, it's kind of like a Melchizedek. What?
Yep.
What?
Oh, goodness.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.